When you hear a genre, you generally have a general expectation of what that game is going to play like. When you hear MMO, you probably think of the theme park MMO. Oh, there's going to be a set storyline with some side quests, and you're going to follow through it and level up and do this whole main sort of theme. And it's basically like, yay, parades all the time. And then you're also going to hear Sandbox MMO, and you're going to be like, oh, so it's going to be like a life sim. You're going to go out and farming and building houses and things like that. But then you get games like this one that basically break the mold and ends up being not really defined under a single genre because it ends up being truly unique. Mackie here with an impression review of Black Desert Online. This is easily one of my favorite MMOs ever made so far, and it's because it is so unique, and the way that it does a lot of things personally resonates with me in a lot of ways. It is one of those games, technically it is a sandbox MMO, but it introduces theme park MMO elements. It ends up introducing action game elements and things like that all mesh together and make this really unique experience that's not necessarily unique on its own right, like let's say, individual aspects to it, but it is a very beautiful MMO in not only the way that it's sort of built and presented, but in the way that it is designed as well. And I love it a ton. That said, it is a super niche game. And so basically, if you don't think that you'll like a lot of these niche aspects, I don't necessarily know if I'll be able to recommend it, but let's go ahead and check it out and see if that's the case. So real quick, normally I would end up going over the settings. However, there are 2 tabs that we're missing. So I'm going to do that once we log into a character instead. But I do want to mention this game is fairly intensive because it is a pretty looking game, but at the same time, that comes with a kind of a drawback. But let's go ahead and go into start here, which will log me in. Now, don't worry about this. This is basically a channel list. The NA and EU server, which this is a review for, basically only has one server, so everyone's able to play together, so you don't have to worry about selecting a server or anything like that, which is kind of nice. I like that aspect. But then you're able to select whatever channel you want to go to. Now, I have a bunch of different characters here, but as with most MMOs, let's go ahead and look at the character customization. Yes, I would like to create a new character. Won't actually create it, but there we go. Anyway, so here are the different kind of characters. You'll notice right off the bat that this is a class-based game, and you pick the class right as soon as you end up starting up the game and creating a character. Now, one thing that some people are definitely not a fan of is the gender-locked classes. So basically, like, let's say the warrior and the Valkyrie, they'll both use sword and shield. However, they are gender-locked because they are completely different classes. So, for example, the warrior is more about all melee and things like that, and he's all about trying to take down enemies. He's more of a power-hungry class, to whereas the Valkyrie is more of like a guarding class. This is the class that I'll mostly be showing in the background of this video, to where basically it's all about defensive status and kind of using CC and different sort of evasion abilities and things like that. So it's more about survivability, and there's a lot of different kind of customizations as well that you can end up doing to this in the skill tree. But for example, the male ninja is more about power and CC, trying to take down the enemies as fast as possible, whereas the Kunoichi is more about evasion and magic skills and ranged abilities and trying to kind of deceive the enemy and stuff like that. That said, you could still play them fairly similar, and there's a lot of abilities that do end up crossing over, especially with the Witch and Wizard, which is more of like a classic base class. But one thing I will mention is that each class definitely feels unique in its own right. The only exception to this is the Witch and the Wizard, which are both very much these sort of charge magic classes that you would find in older style MMOs, and it's very unique in the way that it kind of plays because it is very, very different than all the rest of the classes. But one of my favorite parts about this, and one of the reasons why I have so many different characters, is because every single class feels different and unique. And not only that, but they also look different and unique. Different abilities on even the same classes. For example, the Musa and the Mayo. I don't know actually how to say that, but basically, even their abilities will end up looking different and unique, and that's really, really powerful in my opinion. It's very, very unique in a lot of the aspects that they have into it, so it makes each different sort of class and character feel very unique. And this also goes into the character customization as well. If I go to creation here, you'll notice you actually have a few tabs here. Now, there's actually only horoscope and customizing that you really want to pay attention to, but you can change the weather as well to kind of change how you want the sort of character to look in the lighting, which is this is actually more important than it would seem, because basically the game has a ton of different weather effects and stuff like that, and that will change the way your character looks. And so some people will make their character skin too bright or something like that, which is kind of annoying. First off, you get your horoscope, which is basically your character's personality. This only affects some certain story elements and basically character NPC interactions, which isn't that big of a deal. No matter what you pick, there's going to be pros and benefits to it, so basically it's not really that big of a deal. I just picked whichever one kind of fits the role-playing status, I guess you could say. I don't really role-play in this game, but there you go. Then you get your actually customizing. Now, one complaint I will have is that certain options are fairly limited. For example, the hairstyles. Each different class is going to have different hairstyles and sort of a base structure. However, you're able to modify this base structure. A good example here is if I end up picking one of these long hairstyles, I can actually go into shape, and I'm able to sort of select an object and move it around. I don't know if this hairstyle can move around all too much, but you can change the lengths of it as well. There are certain hairstyles that you can't do as much. So like, let's say the ponytail, for example, if I wanted the ponytail really long or really short, this is actually really, really nice to have because you can add in a little bit more customization. Let's see if I can get a hairstyle that's more, this class may not have a hairstyle where you can, oh, this one, I can do that on this one. But basically, I can actually go in here and I can actually move the hair around and stuff like that and kind of stretch it out or make it shorter and everything like that. And you can also change the color and everything, which is actually fairly nice. I like this to where basically you can even change like the color of the hair ends. And so if you wanted to do like this sort of dye thing, you'll notice on all of my characters, they kind of have like a darker sort of sheen up at the top. And then basically, you know, I make it look more natural, but you can also do some weird combinations, things like that, which a lot of people end up doing. And it's kind of into that customization of you can kind of do whatever you want. Now I was talking about how they have this base structure. So you'll have a face type for every single character, and they have a fairly decent selection. They have some major sort of differences, but then some minor. Some characters are a little bit more difficult to make looking unique than others. But basically, you're able to take that whole moving system, and you're actually able to move all these different nodes around. And so, like, let's say I wanted her to have super buff cheekbone, or if I wanted to go ahead and make her like all poofy and stuff like that, you can end up doing that, and you can end up customizing it in any way that you want. You can end up having even like super weird and funky stuff, which I don't necessarily like doing that. And most people seem to do something more realistic, but this ends up creating a situation to where you can kind of move it around. You can rotate it. You can also make it bigger and smaller and things like that. And this creates a situation to where every single character has the opportunity to look very unique. There's a lot of things that you can end up doing with this sort of customization system. Now, there are some finicky aspects to it, and you can make a character look completely ridiculous, but nobody ends up doing that because this game kind of relies on a sort of more realistic feel. And since it is more of a niche title, I think that the type of people that are going to be playing are the type of people that want more general looking characters. It's going to be a huge investment when you end up going into one of these sort of characters. And so basically, there's going to be some situations where you don't necessarily want to do certain things, but you can end up making them look completely different, and you can spend a lot of time in this character customizer. And there's a lot of different kind of color options as well. I will say, once again, some of these selections are a little bit limited, such as like eyebrows and things like that, and I wish there was more customization options, but this is still more than most MMOs give you, which is kind of nice. And so you can actually even do like skin shine and things like that. I have one character that's kind of messed up right now because I accidentally turned up the skin shine when I was customizing them, and then when my ticket ran out, I wasn't able to change it. But yeah, you can even change their expressions and things like that. So there's a lot of things that you can do within the customizing, but also the body is a little bit limited as well, which basically there's a target height and a minimum height as well. One complaint I'll have about that is basically the fact that the height and the body size is going to be kind of specific to that class. And so each different class will have a different min height and a max height, which makes it very difficult to kind of judge how tall or how big your character is based off of other characters in the world. So you'll actually get into the game and be like, oh, well, this character doesn't look right because it's like, oh, I think I'm really tall. And then you end up being too short or vice versa, which is kind of annoying as well, which is just something that just kind of, you know, keep in mind when you're customizing your character. Now, when you end up making characters and things like that, it does kind of give you a sort of free period, and you can always delete and then recreate a character as well to kind of get the aspect that you want. But that is the kind of rundown of it. And yes, there is a boob and butt slider, as everyone seems to ask that. But yes, you can actually make them different sizes and stuff like that. So I have all female characters at the moment because bite me. But yeah, so you can actually see I have some fairly different looking characters and stuff like that. And I fairly like having that aspect. But let's go ahead and log in, and then we'll talk some more about the kind of technical aspects. We'll try and go short on it because nobody likes to sit here through a bunch of technical stuff, and then we'll get straight into gameplay. But here we are in the world. Now, that loading screen is basically the only loading screen you're going to see in the game. Now, that was fairly quick because I've already logged in before, just for the sake of making it quick and everything like that. But there is only one loading screen, is when you're switching servers or switching characters, and then you're basically in the game, and the entire world is open world. So if I go ahead and open my map, everywhere in this world I can go through seamlessly, everywhere in here. And also, if you saw it, you saw a bunch of trees, and you're like, that's not a desert. Don't worry, there's a desert. I haven't really gotten too far into it, but it's a high-level area, and there is a desert. But there's also islands and this whole open ocean and everything. It's a huge world. We'll talk about it in a little bit. But anyways, let's go ahead and go over technical aspects. So we'll go into settings. Here's the two tabs that we were missing before. But here's the screen apps kind of options and things like that. It does have your full screen windowed, and windowed mode. Now, I'm in full screen windowed because I currently suffer a bug in the game that has to do with its frame smoothing. Now, the game has a frame limiter kind of built into it. And even if you have auto frame optimizer off, which is basically where it kind of customizes the setting to kind of keep a certain frame rate, the game will have loading stutter like crazy when you're kind of going around the world. It is open world. And so you'll be like going on a horse or something like that, and you'll go too fast and your system won't be able to load up the next area quick enough, or the server won't respond quick enough to send you character data. And so you'll run into a situation where the game will stutter. And it seems like it kind of drops the FPS, and then the game tries to optimize it, and then it causes a bunch of other stutter and stuff like that. And also, the frame smoother does not work in full screen windowed, which is a good thing because the smoother likes to take that aspect and try and smooth your frame rate a lot lower than it's supposed to be. And so when I first started the game, I was playing in full screen. It was running at 20 FPS all the time. I'm like, what is going on? And I turned it on full screen windowed. It fixed it. Not everyone has this problem, and so maybe it's just going to be with certain systems, but do keep that in mind. Also, you have your screen resolution. This does go into ultra wide and everything like that. I only have the 16:9 resolutions because that's what I'm running at. And then you also have your texture quality, which it has these little tiny windows things. It's like, this is the changes, although it's too small to actually use that. And so if you want to find out the differences in quality, you can go ahead and look up different resources for that and stuff like that. I believe there was an official post on the forums that has all that type of stuff. One thing I would like to see in these customization options is maybe more toggleable options and more details. For example, on anti-aliasing, it just gives us an image, which in my screenshots, I literally could take a screenshot of this image and then roll it over, and it's basically exactly the same image because it's too small to actually see what's going on. I don't know if there's a way to like increase that or anything, but I would like a description. What type of anti-aliasing is this? I don't know. I think it's FXAA. I don't know for sure because it doesn't tell me. Same thing with SSAO. I don't know what it is. They also have a high-end mode, which basically we want to turn off because this kills your frame rate with very little benefit. Basically increases the draw distance on things, and that's not a 100% something that you want to end up doing. Down here, you get a bunch of optimization settings. Now, if you do have a lower end system, there are a ton of different effects you can turn off. Like all these things, you can turn off all of them. You can also remove snow buildup and stuff like that. Yes, snow does build on your character. It's kind of funny. And then you also have things like, low graphics power mode, which basically ends up turning off basically every single effect in the game, but it makes it playable on basically any sort of system, which is kind of nice. You'll obviously still get some CPU limitations and stuff like that, but that is a thing to keep in mind. So there you go. And then you also have some other sort of customization things. In audio, I actually like all the audio settings that we have in here. And so basically, if you end up looking through here, you actually have a bunch of different options. So you actually have, turn off music, turn off writing music, turning off notifications, and then you have a ton of volume sliders, which is super, super nice. In your game options, you have a different customizations for the UI and things like that. The UI is also completely customizable. We'll look at that in a second. And then basically, you're able to kind of simplify the UI and things like that. I have basically everything I don't need off. So basically, if I don't need it, I have it off because I like a minimal UI. You can also have guiding arrows for your navigation and stuff like that. I have it off, but it actually looks quite nice. I'll end up turning on the arrow just to end up showing it around. And then you also have animation types for when you open up the map. I have it off because it has performance bugs, and I like to just have the map right away. But yeah, there's a bunch of customization stuff. You can also end up changing the way that the camera interacts as well. Was that under screen settings? Yeah, so the camera effects and stuff like that, so like shaking and things like that, if it ends up bothering you or you're low FPS, you can end up changing it. You also have input settings, which can rebind absolutely everything, which is super, super nice. One thing that's super unique is you're able to double bind a double tap key. Now, you can have dodge on double tap, and you can assign a key to double tap. So you can end up having double tap and then a key to do it as well. Now, I just have shift, so if I end up going like, yay, I just have shift as my dodge key, and so I can use that or I can double tap. I hate double tap, so I don't use it, and you can turn it off, but I just have it on because every once in a while, I want to use it because, I want to dash forward because shift and forward just ends up running. And so basically I want to dash forward. We'll talk about combat in a minute. And then basically, to kind of close this out, you also have gamepad settings as well, but I don't necessarily like the gamepad controls in this game because it has camera-based attacks and everything. And so basically trying to play this on the gamepad is very, very difficult. But if you want to, you can. UI hotkeys as well. And for the UI customization, I'll go ahead and go in here real quick. You can completely customize everything. You can move everything around. The only things you can't is the level up system because that's basically stuck at the top bar, and then the maps. And basically everything else can be sort of customized. You can even turn it off. So if you don't want a mini map, you can turn it off. There you go. And so, yeah, and you can also adjust your camera perspective. And so if we go on to adjust perspective, I can be like, oh, I want it over there, or I want it over here. And you can actually make it quite ridiculous if you want to. So yeah, there's a ton of different options that you can end up doing, and it's quite nice. Now let's go ahead and talk about gameplay and the way that the sort of world works. So this is Black Desert Online. Now that we're, 10 minutes through and actually through all the technical bullets. Yeah, so basically this is Black Desert. And basically it is a giant world, and it is a sandbox MMO. It is a game to where you can basically do whatever you want. Now it does have quests and things like that. So you'll notice on the right side of the screen, down on this lower side, I'll end up clicking over my mouse, you can actually see over there. Basically, there are quests, and there is a main storyline and everything like that. So if you want to play through and just play through the main story, you can. And you can play it like a theme park MMO. However, I don't necessarily think that's the most enjoyable way to play the game. That said, you can play it any way that you want. But as you see, this isn't necessarily a desert. Black Desert actually has a lot of different regions and things like that that look completely different. Like, you even saw a snow option. Yes, there are snowy mountains and things like that. And so, yes, it is a really, really unique in the way that the sort of world is sort of built. And it's built more in a realistic kind of way. So if I keep going along this path, I'll actually run into the desert and everything. And it'll be like, oh, well, it doesn't just like transition from here's trees and then all of a sudden desert. No, it's like there's trees and then fewer trees. And then all of a sudden it's a desert and everything like that, which is actually kind of cool. Also, movement is all free and everything like that. This game's combat has been compared to Muso fighters, and so if you know what those are, basically they are third-person action games where you're going to be kind of fighting on hordes of enemies and everything like that, and it's going to be very much more fast-paced and everything like that. And so if we go ahead and fight this enemy and everything like that, you'll end up seeing that I'm able to use a bunch of different abilities. You'll see a hotbar down at the bottom. However, you don't actually use a lot of hotkeys to actually use in combat. There are certain abilities where you have to. However, it is a more of an action style kind of combat, and you actually use combos instead of using a hotkey system. And so for every single ability that I want to use, I'm going to use different sort of combo keys, as you can end up calling them, to end up using your different abilities. And so similar to like an action game or a fighting game, different sort of combos of different keys and button presses are going to end up doing different abilities. And so if I want to end up using a different skill, I'll end up just using that button combination. Now, there are certain skills, such as, this one that I can end up using right now, to where you can only use that when it's on the hotkey, and that's an ability that I'm able to charge up. It's kind of like a special skill and everything like that, so it's not necessarily something you want to combo into. However, there are certain abilities that you can use that will combo into each other, and this is one thing that is a huge benefit to the gameplay, in my opinion, is that everything feels like it kind of blends together. The only class to where it doesn't feel like that is maybe the mage classes, and that's mostly because they are charged based, and so you're going to be spending a lot of your time just charging a different spell. And I feel like that was sort of intentional, and so it was sort of like meant to be that way. And so I don't necessarily think that is a complaint. It's just a different style of gameplay, which is actually fairly unique. This guy is shooting me, and he's actually doing a lot of damage, so I need to make sure to take care of him. But the game actually goes off of this combo system. So basically, you actually have a set number of keys. Oh god, I'm dying. I need to, like, not be in danger real quick. But basically, the game has different sort of keys that are sort of like a different sort of style of attack. And so, for example, on the Valkyrie, I have my left click, which is going to use my main sort of sword abilities. I have my right click, which is going to use my sword and secondary abilities. And then I just died. Holy cow. Well, I'm going to go ahead and resurrect to the closest node. I didn't think I would die there. I'm going to lose XP because I died, but I didn't lose that much. Hopefully I don't down level. You can down level in this game, but I don't think I will because I'm not red named. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And as you can see, you can actually die. If you're not paying attention and like being careful with the enemies that you're fighting, this game can actually kill you quite easily, especially if you're not geared properly. Let's go ahead and fight some different enemies. Now the game, like I was saying, it goes off of these sort of combo keys, or basically you have like a certain set of keys that are going to be different styles of attacks. For example, the Valkyrie has a left click and a right click, which is going to be your sword and shield abilities and your magic abilities. And then you have a secondary and a primary magic skill. So basically I have my Q and my E, which basically uses different sort of magic abilities as well. So it's kind of like, use these different sort of keys for these different styles of attacks. And it's going to be different for every single class. You have a grab key as well. So if I try to grab this enemy, he's too heavy for me to pick up. All these guys are. So I can't actually carry him. However, if I was a berserker, I'd be able to pick him up and use different combos based off of that, because every different class is going to have different statistics and what they can end up doing. And I also have a kick key as well, which is probably my favorite move, even though the Valkyrie doesn't use it very much. It's hilarious to walk up to a goblin and just kick it straight in the face, which is kind of funny. But they end up using this, so they have each different button, and instead of having it so that, in a standard MMO, you'd have like a hotkey system where you have like 30 different hotkeys and different combinations you have to use to be able to use all those. Instead, what they do is they have these specialized keys where it's like, oh, you want to use a sword ability? Use the left click. And then you have different directions. So basically, each different key is going to have 5 different abilities that you can end up using off of it based off of what direction you end up pointing, or different abilities that you end up using off of it. If I'm on the ground and end up using my shield, I'll end up spinning and jumping back up. It's one of those systems where it's kind of like context based, and different abilities will end up kind of proccing off of each other as well. And so if I end up using my backwards attack, and I can end up using this style of attack, where normally I would end up having to guard to be able to use that attack as well. Because if I use that same combination, sorry, I have the combination window off. It probably would have been smart to turn that on. But if I use that same combination, I use this forward slash. However, if I end up guarding, it'll end up using this sort of different stance system. And every single class has a different sort of stance and different combo system. And so, you know, the Valkyrie class will be completely different than playing, let's say, the Ninja class, for example. There's also mounted combat as well. Now, I'm not 100% fan of the mounted combat. I think it's kind of funny, and you do have to train. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the sort of life skills aspect of the game. But it is one of those situations to where, you know, there is mounted combat that you can unlock, but it runs into a situation to where the mount can get stuck on enemies very, very easily. And so you kind of run into a situation to where you're just stuck. It's really good for like going around and just like running in PvP and stuff like that. It's actually extremely fun, although your horse can die and stuff like that. Now let's go ahead and talk about the RPG elements and the gearing and the sort of skills aspect. So I'm going to go ahead and set up an auto pass somewhere. So if I go ahead and open up my map. Now this game kind of has an aspect to where it wants everything to be more realistic. And so basically you'll run into a situation to where it's like, oh, we want everything to be realistic. So you actually have to travel everywhere. There is no fast travel system. Where do I want to go? I think I want to go, let's go ahead and go this way since there's higher level enemies. So I'll go ahead and right click there and it's going to auto path me in that direction. I went the wrong way. That's fine. But we'll end up auto pathing. And basically this auto path makes it so that you can actually travel around the world. Like I said, there is no fast travel. However, if I go ahead and go to disconnect and go to my character, it'll say in transit. There is a fast travel system for a specific character. So basically I can click transport, it'll take it to a certain city or whatever node I select it to, and then it will transfer that. And while that character is in transit, you can actually play different characters. And so I plan on, near the end of this review, switching over to a different character when I talk about the sort of world aspects of it and everything like that. We'll do that in 6 minutes. But regardless, when we end up talking about the RPG stuff, we can actually go into these sort of way you gain experience and the different types of experience. So if I open up my skill windows here, hopefully I don't run into any enemies. That would suck. You'll actually notice that there's a bunch of different skills and stuff like that, and they all sort of have a linear progression. This is kind of one complaint, is that it is sort of linear, but it also allows you to select whatever you want. And so, for example, when you get to a certain level, you're able to unlock different abilities, and you can choose which one to unlock. It's not like one of these situations where it's like, oh, well, I have to have the Just Guard to be able to unlock my magic ability. No, it's not like that. It's basically like, if this attack needs this attack to literally be used, then yes. For example, you need to upgrade your guard to be able to use your shield counter, or sorry, your shield push counter, because basically it runs off of the just counter attack. And so basically you literally can't use it if you can't just guard. And so it's one of those situations where, yeah. And you can also see a little tiny video preview of all the abilities and stuff like that. It makes it very easy to be like, oh, I want that ability. That ability looks cool. Or I want to be able to use that. And it's like, oh yeah. And it tells you a lot of detailed information as well, like specifics on how its damage calculates and everything like that, which is super, super nice. There's also an awakening weapon, which I haven't gotten there yet. And so basically there's actually a completely different weapon set and different abilities and things like that you can end up using for different characters. For example, the Valkyrie ends up getting a lance and stuff like that. So there is variations in gameplay depending on the level that you're at. Now you unlock Awakening at level 56. Since I died, my XP bar actually dropped 2%, which is upsetting because it takes a long time to level up, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Now there's different types of experience as well. And so basically you have your primary experience, which is going to be your main level, and that's called your combat level. And so basically that's the bar at the top that I just lost experience because I ended up dying. Hold on, I need to feed my horse a carrot because he's getting tired. There we go. There's no animation for that, which is kind of tiring or kind of annoying, but you can end up, let's see, what button is it? Communicate, F9. I don't know why it's F9. I could end up using the mouse for it as well. You actually hit the control key and you can actually end up using all these menus so you can kind of do whatever you want. Your mount can also carry stuff and stuff like that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But there's different types of experience. So you have your combat level, which is basically your main level. So I'm level 55 right now, which is a fairly decent level. It's above the soft cap. And so basically it's one of those situations where you actually have that combat level. It's going to be like, this is how effective you are with your stats and everything. However, you also have skill XP, life experience, and you also have contribution points, and you also have an energy system. And so basically these systems end up going a lot into like the skill system and the sort of life skills and things like that that end up, being something we'll talk about in a minute. But the skill point system is actually fairly interesting. You're not capped on anything. Your level cap, there is no level cap. Instead, what they end up introducing is a soft cap and a hard cap. So the soft cap is level 50. And so at level 50, it'll become increasingly difficult to end up leveling up. Now, getting up to level 50, not actually that hard, especially if you end up having some XP boosters, which the game hands out to you like crazy. So it's not necessarily difficult to obtain those. You can actually obtain them. No, it's not something you have to pay for. Yes, you can pay for them if you want to get a little bit faster. But, there are a lot of things that you don't necessarily have to pay for because there are quite a few of them. And basically, it runs into a situation to where nothing actually has a cap. For example, the cap on skill points. For example, you know, like let's say you want to learn absolutely everything. It'll take you a long time, of course, because the more skill points you get, the longer it takes to actually earn other points. But at the same time, it's unlimited. So you don't ever have to feel like, oh my God, I can't get this. And you can actually reset your skills as well. Before level 56, you can actually reset them at any time that you want. So if I wanted to go through and completely respec, I could. And it'll ask you when you get to level 56, it's like, hey, do you want to respec before you end up leveling up? And then you can end up just respecing real quick. So you can end up being set up the way that you want to. And so that's one of those aspects where it's like, it kind of adds in a lot of freedom. But at the same time, a lot of people have complained that it ends up being a little bit grindy to kind of get up there in the higher levels, because you run into a situation to where we're going to see the guide arrows, by the way, because I'm going to use my horse. Can I whistle to him? Nope, he's too far away. God, my whistling strength is so weak right now. I need to get a flute. You can get a flute to call your horse and stuff like that. But you'll see the little guiding arrow. It'll end up pointing to where we're end up going and stuff like that. Did it end up turning on? Oh, there was an animation glitch. That's one of the loading bugs in the game. Talk about that in a second. Also, there's a guy floating on the ground, which is another loading bug. When people can't load in properly, stuff like that happens. It's not that big of a deal, but it does happen, and it can break things apart. Now, the energy system and things like that is actually something that ends up playing into sort of the other aspects. Actually, I don't want to go to town. Let's go ahead and just go deeper into the desert and stuff like that. We'll talk about quests and things like that. Now, the game does have a bunch of life skills and things like that. And so if I end up opening... Oh, I can't open the processing while I'm moving. Of course, when you're mounted, you can't open up all the menus. But if I go into processing, there's actually crafting and things like that. And so this is basic crafting. However, the main system that you end up using, like let's say I wanted to combine these sort of alchemy ingredients. So let's say I wanted to make these potions and combine them into a better potion. I can end up doing that wherever I want. However, there's also an interesting system to where this game has a bunch of life skills. And so there's going to be gathering. For example, if I hit the P key, I can actually go over here. So there's professions. And so basically you have gathering, processing, which this is processing that I'm doing right now. You have cooking, alchemy. Actually, no, this is alchemy, not processing. Processing is like drying meats and things like that. And then you get training, which is going to be your horse training. I'm an apprentice 5 because I like training horses, stuff like that. That's how you unlock mounted combat as well. I think you unlock it at apprentice 1. It's either a rookie 1 or apprentice 1. Or is rookie after? I'm not 100% sure on all the life skill stuff. I haven't really spent that much time on it. And you get fishing, you get hunting, you get trading, you get farming, and sailing. And one of the interesting aspects of this game is that it's not necessarily all that you end up doing either. And so, for example, on the crafting aspects of things, you actually get things called workers. So if I open up my workers tab, you can actually see I have a bunch of workers that are already doing things for me. And they're collecting resources, they're gathering materials, they are sort of combining things to make better gear and things like that. And so basically that's something that they end up doing. And so I can end up having this guy who's not doing anything. I'll end up going on to the map here and I can be like, oh, well, in Heidel, I have these different sort of aspects that I have sort of unlocked. And so I have a bunch of storage places. You're able to use these contribution points, which you end up unlocking passively. This is another type of experience. You get contribution points and they end up adding into the sort of general value. They can end up unlocking houses and stuff like that. There is a house decoration option as well. So in Heidel, I have a house right here, I believe. And so I have a residence that's all has my cooking and stuff like that. So it's actually really, really interesting and you can end up decorating it and things like that, which is kind of cool. And so you actually have a lot of these aspects and this isn't locked behind a paywall either. And so it's one of those aspects to where anybody can do it. And it's kind of nice to be able to go into it. And I could actually have up to 5 residents, I think. And that isn't like a paid cap. It is just, you could only have 5 residences. However, I'm able to unlock all these different things. But the way that crafting works is like, I can go into my refinery, for example, manage crafting. And then basically the workers will end up actually crafting specific items. And so you can end up having different workers working on different aspects of different items. So for example, if I want him to make this blackstone powder, oh God, I'm under attack. Well, hello. It closes the menu if you end up getting into a part where you get attacked. I thought I clicked on going to a city, but I guess, oh, that's a lava mine. Oh, I wanted to go to a city. Let's go to Tariff. Whoops. Let's just go ahead and go to auto run on that one. That was my bad. So that is one thing. You can actually turn that off if you don't like that, but it'll close out the menu when you get attacked. That is one thing. If you want to go AFK while you're traveling, you will randomly get attacked. Whoops. I accidentally alt-tabbed because I was trying to open up a different menu. There we go. Yeah. God, I'm so terrible when it comes to this sort of like every single button on my keyboard. I'm like, it does a different thing. I got to remember which one it is. All right. Anyways, so they'll end up doing these sort of crafting things. And this actually goes into also the sort of node investment in the game as well. Like you have all these life skills and things like that. I'm not going to touch too much on them, but like as you fish, as you gather rocks, as you process alchemy and things like that, the better you get at it and the more better kind of stuff you can get. But you can also invest in nodes, which will end up having different sort of places that you can end up having different workers go to and get different resources. You can improve the sort of drop rates and things like that. For example, I have a worker here at the wheat farming area, and so basically he's gathering wheat for me, and you can end up having workers in every single city. So like, let's say I wanted to have, I believe I have a guy that's like sort of, I'm kind of leveling him up over here, but I'm building a boat in this city, while in the other city I have it collecting resources, and then I can use a transit system that actually transits the storage onto the other city. And one of the aspects to this game that is so unique is the fact that everything is sort of grounded in a sort of, I don't want to say real sense, because it's not realistic in any sort of sense, but at the same time, it's sort of a grounded feel. Each storage and each sort of everything that you have unlocked inside of each town is specific to that town. And so, for example, if I go to this town, for example, oh my God, I'm getting a lot of loading bugs. This is probably because I'm recording. And so basically this is what happens when your game can't load and stuff like that. Don't worry, this doesn't normally happen. This only happens because I'm recording. And so basically when I'm trying to record, it's using a lot of my RAM and it's using a lot of my disk drive. And so basically, yeah. But anyways, going back on topic, if I'm in this town, you know, all my storage and stuff like that, if I go to the storage keeper, which I believe I can navigate to using the navigation system here. So if I go to storage, oh, I crouched. Whoops. Pushed the wrong key again. I am terrible with that. This is why I play games with a, you know, gamepad most of the time, because there's only a limited number of buttons. It's so much easier for me to remember instead of a full keyboard. But anyways, yeah, so if I end up going to the storage keeper, I won't have the storage that's in that other area. However, yes, they're not going to show up because once again, I'm having loading bugs and stuff like that. If I go to my warehouse, it's empty. But if I end up going on to my map here and I go over to my idle area, you'll actually see I have my storage. Now I can use transit to be like, oh, I want to move this item from this location to this location, and it'll end up doing that. And everything has a timer. And that also goes into the aspects of what I was talking about earlier, to where there is no fast travel system. There is no system to where, oh, I want to fast travel to this location and I want to go there instantly. That's not a thing that's going to happen in this game. And while some people are going to hate that aspect, and they're definitely going to be naysayers about it, there's also a lot of aspects to where, you know, like, oh, I got to go to this town to get my horse and stuff like that. And so it's like stable keepers, you know, you have a stable. I don't have any horses in the stable, but you can actually see where all my horses are. So it's like this one's in Hytale City and this one's in Velia. And so basically they're in different cities and I'll have to go to that city. And it creates this kind of world that kind of feels like it's real. It prevents it from becoming a theme park. You're not going from one attraction to the next. It's more about living in this world. And that is one of the main aspects to the game that's actually a huge benefit to it. And one of the city aspects as well, like these cities, they're not over glorified areas. They're not like huge locations just to be huge locations. They feel like a little village. They have these sort of smaller villages off to the side, like this little farm here. For example, you go over here and it's like, oh yeah, there's this little tiny farm. And like these things are scattered throughout the world, and it feels so much more real than most MMOs. Most MMOs go for like this, there's this giant hub area and it's just like all this, you know, giant open space for players to roam around. But the village and stuff like that, like this is a scene that looks like it's from like a single player RPG. It doesn't look like it's from an MMO, and it feels like that as well. It is an MMO, but it has that sort of feeling to it, and it feels very, very unique in the way that it's kind of built and stuff like that. And if my character is done transferring to Calpheon, yeah, so we can actually change on to this character and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and change on to my Sora shard, which is my sorceress. I'm going to going over there and we can actually look at Calpheon. And Calpheon is one of the bigger cities in the game. There's multiple of them as well. If we end up going into the map later, we can actually look at all of them. But the world itself and the design in it as well just feels so much more real. Like, it's not realistic because it is a fantasy game. There's magic and everything like that. And it, like in that city that I'm in, there's witches that have floating objects and things. And that's sort of like kind of in the world. But like, it feels like when you're in this world, it's immersive. It is real in that sort of realm. If this was to be a real location, it feels like that's how it would be. Now, there are certain cases to where they do sort of kind of skimp on that idea to kind of make it more gameplay oriented. For example, you know, things like, oh, I can feed my horse a carrot while riding, and it doesn't have to go through an animation or anything like that. And, you know, it's one of those situations to where, you know, it's gameplay first, and that definitely feels like the design aspects to it. It is gameplay first. And so when you're looking at these situations like, oh, I can, you know, tell one city to transit items while I'm all the way across the map. You know, it's like one of those aspects to where it's like, yeah, that's not realistic in any sort of sense. However, it is gameplay first where, you know, even though it is sort of more of these realistic things, like, yes, there's no fast travel, and yes, you have to manually go everywhere. You have to manually craft everything, and you have to manually manage all your storage and stuff like that. It's meant to feel that way, and it feels like it was gameplay first rather than being like, oh, we want it to be realistic, so we're going to add in like health meters and things like that. And like, that's not something that you necessarily want to see. Where the hell did it take me? It took me to like the side of the village. I don't know why the auto path took me here. Anyways, yeah, it took me to the side village. That's kind of strange, but we'll end up just walking around. There's also different sort of knowledge and stuff like that. Now, there are side quests as well, and so you can end up going in basically every single location. There's going to be different NPCs you can end up talking to. There's also a conversation system, and so if we end up going in here, you end up having this little mini game and stuff like that. I'm just going to randomly click, but you'll end up getting an objective, and basically this will end up unlocking knowledge. Now, knowledge is important because it increases your energy, and so basically you get energy experience, and then when you get enough, you actually get another energy point, and energy is used for things like this sort of system, and amenity is your relationship with a character as well. You can also say hi to people and stuff like that, so I can greet them. This is probably one of my favorite aspects. You just go wave at people and they say hi back. It's kind of hilarious. And there's one little girl in the first area to where if you wave at them, they scream at you. And I thought it was hilarious. They like scream with excitement and stuff like that, which was hilarious. But yeah, the energy system basically is used for things like gathering and stuff like that, and it is one of those situations where it sort of limits you in certain aspects, but it never feels overbearing. And since you're able to kind of increase it and everything like that, I wish I would have kind of taken my horse with me. My horse is all the way in Heidel, I think. Oh no, I don't even have a horse. So yes, it is in Heidel. It's in the stables in Heidel. Yeah, also, we're going to get a bunch of loading bugs, and so a lot of the NPCs and players aren't going to show up, and there's going to be a lot of stuttering. I apologize for that. That is just because I'm recording, but this is probably my favorite city in the game, because once everything loads up, God, I hate this. I hate how it has this loading bug. Whenever I try to record this game, it always has this loading bug. But these cities and stuff like that, once it ends up loading up all the NPCs, it looks like a city. And it feels like a city, and there's all these different merchants and everything like that, and so you can end up going onto the map, and you can click into the city, and you can actually see all these little tiny icons, and these are different sort of shops and everything like that. You can end up unlocking residents that you can end up unlocking, like, and decorating and everything like that, and it feels like a city. It's not like just a giant open hub for players to kind of connect. It feels like a living city, and no NPCs aren't like traveling around and things like that in specific ways that would be like realistic. They do have like a sort of set schedule, and you'll notice that NPCs do just kind of stand around. But it's the look and feel that feels important to me. And it feels very much like a world. And that is like the main draw for me. Now, the combat is great. I do like the combat quite a lot. And that is sort of something that I do enjoy. You can just run around and you can use different combos and things like that. And, like, for example, the sort of mage class and everything like that focuses on using the sort of combination between charges, ranged attack, and jumping in and using different abilities. Oops, I killed a protester. Apparently there are things around. So this is one kind of technical bug as well. I'm going to talk about story in a second, but like I said, this only happens because I'm recording, but basically all these NPCs are not actually here, and I'm actually under attack, apparently. I didn't even know there was enemies there because I didn't look on the map. They do show up on the map. There's little red markers. But yeah, there's a whole protest thing. You can actually go and just kill a bunch of guys if you want to. But I'm going to go ahead and ignore that. I didn't actually mean to kill one of those, and you lose karma. Now, the life skills thing, I was talking about how there's like sort of open PvP, and you can kind of do whatever you want. There is a karma system as well. So if I go ahead and hit P, you can actually see your karma. Karma is character-based, and so if you get negative karma, basically you are considered a villain. And basically what that means is that you're going to be a red name, and players and enemy guards inside of a town. So for example, the soldier sitting here, he'll get all aggressive and be like, oh my God, there's a, enemy here. And basically they'll end up attacking you and things like that. And it's sort of an interesting system to where, yes, there is open PvP. You can technically go and like raid players. There's also a trading system to where if I go to a trade manager, I can pick up trade packs and put them on the back of my mount. I can get a wagon to where I can end up sort of transporting things, or that's transport. I want the trade manager. There we go. And so basically, it runs into a situation to where, you can end up making money in a lot of different ways. And that's sort of end game for some people, is like just earning a lot of money. I'm looking for the specific arrow. There we go. I didn't actually turn that on. I thought I did. There we go. You can also turn on navigation arrows and stuff like that if you don't like just having an arrow that points to the direction. Now, personally, I like to kind of do the exploration thing. And that's one of my favorite parts about this game, is actually just exploring and stuff like that. But, you end up going to this trade manager, you can actually pick up these trade packs, and you can end up selling these in different regions as well. Once again, going into the sort of life skills things and stuff like that. And so my trading skill isn't very high, and so I can't really get a lot of stuff on this character. But let's say I wanted to, sell pallets. Now, the farther I move away in different sort of cities and stuff like that, the more it's going to be worth. And so there's sort of like a risk-reward system, because raiders and bandits that are actually, NPCs can not only raid you, but also other players can raid you as well. And so they can sort of steal your objects and things like that. And so it'll be like, oh, well, you can end up being a bandit if you want to and stuff like that. And that goes into like the whole freedom aspect of the game. Now let's go ahead and touch on story before I get too far into that, because I'm going to kind of include that into my kind of conclusion and everything like that, just sort of talking about the whole revelation and what I actually enjoy most about the game. But in the story aspect, this game is a sandbox. It allows you to kind of go wherever you want and do whatever you want. Now at the beginning of the game, it does lock you down to a tutorial and locks a lot of sort of games or game concepts or game mechanics behind sort of levels and things like that. And so when you're level 1, you can't necessarily do everything. That said, once you complete the tutorial, it opens up everything. So you can go wherever you want. You can end up navigating. You can end up doing trading. You can end up doing crafting and stuff like that. And so if you're a level, I think it's like level 15 or something like that. It's like level 12, 16, something around that level, to where you end up or getting past the tutorial. And that's basically when you unlock the world. After that, you can do whatever you want. It does have a main story. In the main story, you end up following this black spirit, which you actually go into equipment and stuff like that, to where this guy actually acts as your kind of your upgrader and stuff like that. You actually have item reform, enhancement, and stuff like that. So if we go into gear and things like that, you'll notice I have some upgraded gear. So it has a plus system. So basically you get to plus 15, and then you would get into the it's duo, pre, tri, or is it duo, tri, pre? I can't remember. It's a ridiculous system. No, pre is first because it's a 1. Basically, you get to plus 15, and then there's pluses after that. And it's sort of a system that a lot of people don't like because it is a lot of RNG. We'll talk about that in a second. But he acts as your upgrading stuff. And the gear system is basically, you get your different gears. One thing I will say about the gear is I really like the designs on all of the armors. Now, my sorceress was kind of in a weird sort of fancy getup, and that's because they have a costume that I ended up getting. But basically, most of the armors in the game are realistic, and you can dye them. So if I get off my horse real quick, I can end up going into the dye shop. If I can remember what button it is. Was it F4? I think that's a beauty shop, which is actually the character customization to where you can end up customizing your character. Yes, you can customize your character afterwards. You do have to unlock. That's the cash shop. Oh my God, I cannot remember what the button was. Hold on. Let's find the dye shop. Die. There we go. It's J. I never would have guessed that. I thought it was one of the F keys. But you can actually go in, and for example, if I unlock the dye thing, so this is actually one of these dye setups I had before, and you can actually re-dye everything. So like, let's say I wanted to completely change it to this red and black theme, which is something that I had before. There is a sort of palette that you can unlock called Merv's Palette. And basically what that does is it makes it so you can use all these dyes and stuff like that, but it's a time thing. You get a bunch of them for free. You can unlock them through loyalties, which is something you get for logging in daily. We'll talk about the cash shop later. But the story follows this black spirit and why you act as a vessel for this black spirit. And it doesn't necessarily tell you why. It's like, hey, you're a vessel and I want you to do these things. Just do it because you're my slave. Yeah. And that's like literally the kind of aspect. It's like, hey, do these things because you're my bitch. And like, that's literally like a line from the game. Now, it doesn't use it in that exact context, but it is sort of along those lines to where it's like, hey, do these things because I told you to. And you can do those things, or you could just not do those things. And it sort of adds a sort of line that you can follow. But every single area to go to has these sort of mini stories and these mini quests. And there's a bunch of daily quests as well. It's like if you're in an area and you want to go fight these enemies, or let's say you have a quest to go get some money, or maybe you want to get a drop from a specific enemy. Let's say you need some certain weapon or something like that that drops in a certain area. The game also has an in-game encyclopedia where you can actually find out where you can get all the items in the game as well. So it's not like one of those situations where it's like, oh, I need to go look up a wiki and find out where to get this. It tells you in game. Now, I look up an external wiki because the internal wiki has a better UI, and so it's easier to find stuff, but hey, that's besides the point. But if you're in that area, you can end up going to a local town, learning about that town and stuff like that. You do get knowledge, like I was showing the sort of amity system where you're able to talk to NPCs. You get more knowledge that actually has a gameplay benefit to where it increases your energy, which you can use to invest in nodes. You can use it for crafting. You can use it to, I forgot all the other aspects and stuff like that. You can use it for cooking. There's a lot of different things you can end up using it. You can use it in fishing to improve your chances. You can use it for training. There are wild horses out in the wild to where you can end up taming them. That's a lot of what I've ended up doing and stuff like that. I spent like an entire few hours just going around trying to get the horse I have, which is Kazuke right now is what I have him named. But basically, he's a really fast horse. I found him in a little bit north to this area, and I actually went through this entire sort of aspect where I was trying to catch him. I threw on a rope, and I'm like, I'm going to catch you, dude. And then he got away, and he kicked me in the face. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so going to catch him. And so basically, it was like this whole like hour and a half of me trying to catch this horse, which probably sounds pathetic for people that play the game a lot. But regardless, it was kind of sort of like a story. And like, That's what I like about the game. It's just sort of doing whatever you want. And this sort of goes into the huge benefit to the game. It's the fact that it's a game to where you can kind of do whatever you want. It's not going to guide you on what you need to do. And it's kind of one of those games to where you need to find your own fun. You need to find your own stories. You need to find your own exploration. And while I'm personally a person who enjoys this a lot, I like going through, I like just roaming around on a horse. Once again, loading stutter, I apologize. I like going on the horse and just being like, I'm going to go to that mountain over there. Like, I can see it, I can go to it. So I want to go to that mountain. There are some invisible walls when you end up getting to the edge of the map. So if I end up going on to my thing here, by the way, when I open the map, I am still moving. So I got to be careful where I'm doing this. But, you know, down here, there is an invisible wall. However, they are unlocking this sort of content. For example, this desert area, when the game was in closed beta, when I first originally played it, this area was just, actually, I think the invisible wall was somewhere around here, actually. It was like an invisible wall there. But as they unlock more content, you actually get this. And so basically this map, you know, will just expand while you go through. And now this is the unlocked area. This entire giant area is another area unlocked. There's an island up here. There's a few islands over here. For some reason, I have that island unlocked. I don't know why. I think one of my fishing characters is stuck there. And then basically there's also this area up here. So there's actually quite a bit. And there is, you know, boating and things like that. There's a lot of stuff I'm not going to be able to cover in this video. And we are kind of running out of time. But that's the aspect I like. It's a game to where it doesn't necessarily have an end game or a goal. It's not a game to where you're going to be like, yes, you can follow the main story. And it's like, that's what you're supposed to do, like in most MMOs. But it's one of those situations to where you don't have to. And the game actually doesn't really reward you for doing it either. Oh, my horse leveled up. Sweet. Yes, there is horse leveling and things like that. And they get faster, they get more stamina, and they get more stats and everything like that as you level up each different horse. There's also horse breeding and things like that, which is something I'm doing right now. And so if I go ahead and look at my horse now, he's a faster horse. This is why I like him, because he's kind of fast, and he's a tier 5, which is actually pretty good. I found him out in the wild, which is pretty rare to find a tier 5. He's not as fast as he could be. There are faster breeds, but he is a pure black horse, which is one of the faster ones, which is kind of cool. You can also get mutant horses, which is kind of crazy. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. That's what I like about this game, though, is that you're able to just do whatever you want. You can follow the main story if you want to. You can go into PvP. There's giant PvP wars. There's giant guild wars that I didn't talk about, basically where people kind of compete for these different regions. There's actually an entire mode to where they call Conquest. If you go to the server browser, or rather the channel browser at this stage, it'll show like all these different sort of servers, and sometimes there will be a conquest marker. And so it's like, oh, well, this area is currently in conquest. And so basically all the NPC enemies are turned off except for guards. And basically they're kind of battling for control of that area, and they control taxes in that area, and they can get special resources, and the guild actually adds in benefits. I think my game crashed, by the way, so it's just at a frozen screen. Don't worry, the capture didn't screw up. This is just the game. Like I said, recording and trying to capture this game, especially at this length, is not necessarily something I want to do. I think I'm actually running out of RAM, which is kind of crazy because I have 32 gigs of RAM. You can imagine this game is not easy to capture. But a lot of people are not going to like that aspect. So as a conclusion, this game is great for its niche. If you are within the niche, yes, my game did crash. That's unfortunate. I'll throw in some extra captured footage that I end up capturing after this. And so basically it won't just be blank stuff. I'll end up having more combat and stuff like that in a different area. So I'll end up meshing that in with the gameplay and stuff like that. So that's unfortunate. This game is not easy to capture, so if you are somebody who likes doing captures and stuff like that, make sure to turn down your capture settings and don't be like me and think that you can capture for an hour without it crashing on you. But as a conclusion, I enjoy the living hell out of this game. It's one of my favorite MMOs ever made. Now, it is my favorite Sandbox MMO. It's not going to be my favorite MMO. I think there's a few MMOs that are competing for that spot at the moment. But when you're looking for a Sandbox MMO, I think this is the best one that's out there, because it's not just a Sandbox MMO. It's not just about being like a life sim thing. You're not just going to be like crafting and stuff like that, and it doesn't skimp out on any aspect of it. Everything has depth to it. The world has depth to it. It has a specific design to it. Everything feels grounded. Everything feels like it belongs. Yes, people can make ridiculous looking characters. Yes, you could dye your character to look ridiculous. There's people running around in bright pink armor and stuff like that. It's kind of funny, but at the same time, that's not something that a lot of people end up doing. What you actually end up seeing a lot more of is more realistic looking sort of styles of characters where they're like, hey, I want to look like a badass. And so they're like, I'm going to look like a badass because it meshes with the world better. And that's something that I feel is very unique to the game. It even has a naming kind of limitation, stuff like that. So where you actually have to have a sort of realistic name to where it has to have one capital to start. You can't do like XXX, my name's Dying Hard or something like that. And I'm terrible with internet usernames, but regardless, it has a sort of grounded feature, and a lot of people are going to find that very appealing. The gameplay itself is very, very appealing. It is very much action-based. It does run into some situations to where, you know, aside from these performance issues that I've been running into in this video, it does have problems with like desyncs, for example. Now, in the last patch that they ended up doing about a week ago, they ended up fixing a lot of it, which is actually quite impressive, to where basically the desync is basically to where the server thinks you're in a different spot than you are in your game client. And so basically you would attack an enemy and it wouldn't do any damage because it either thinks the enemy's in a different spot or you're in a different spot. And so it doesn't validate with the server properly. And this ends up kind of breaking up the combat and stuff like that. So it does have that problem as well. So if you are somebody that has a lot of connection problems, might not want to end up checking out this game because you'll run into a lot of problems that way. But as a general sense, like, this game, if it falls within your niche and you like that combat style and stuff like that, and you just want to give it a shot, go ahead and pick it up. It is buy to play in the US regions. It is free to play in other regions. One thing I wanted to talk about is the cash shop, but since my game crashed, I can't really talk about it too much. Some people like to call it pay to win. There are certain aspects to where you could say that is the case, depending on what you consider pay to win. Now, the PvP is going to be gear based, and so certain things like getting extra stats and stuff like that is kind of in the limitation of that. And so basically some people are like, oh, well, you could buy this thing. The thing is, nothing in the cash shop cannot be obtained inside the game itself that gives a beneficial sort of stat bonus. For example, in the cash shop, you can buy better gathering gear, for example. And it's like, oh, that would shorten up your gathering. It's not necessarily going to affect your stats, but it could make it so that it progresses a little bit faster. You get XP boosts. You can make it so that you can invest in nodes without visiting them. You can get different types of costumes and stuff like that. But the costumes only have experience boosts on them if they have any boosts at all. And so like when you get a costume, it'll be like, oh, plus 10% skill XP, which isn't actually all that much if you think about it, because there's a lot of different things that you can end up adding into your boost and stuff like that. The most pay to win thing I've actually seen is the pets. And basically pets are little things that will end up following you. They do have to be fed and stuff like that, so you have to keep up feed. Yes, you can get feed for free, and so you don't have to like keep paying for it and stuff like that. It's not like a money grind thing or anything like that. You can actually craft it in the game, and you can actually do it fairly early on. It's like right after the tutorial when you're in Velia, you can actually... Wait, is it Velia? No, it's Velsia, I think. No, it is Velia. Anyways, in that town, wherever you end up, it's like a port city. You're able to actually craft food right off the bat. And so it's actually really, really easy to do it. And you can do it with very basic materials. Obviously, you can get better feed and stuff like that. But the pets actually automatically pick up items, which means you won't spend a lot of time to like pick up items and things like that. And some people consider that pay to win because they can end up killing more enemies because they don't have to worry about kind of picking up items. Now, for me personally, I don't see that as pay to win. Sure, I think it's nice. I think everything that they have is convenience and stuff like that, but there's not necessarily anything that I've seen that's pay to win. But that is something to be concerned about. If you do want to end up, looking at the game and end up investing a lot of time, some people don't want to end up spending money on a game that ends up being pay to win. But for me personally, in the NA region, there isn't anything that's pay to win, in my opinion. But that's obviously going to base. You can look at their entire cash shop online and stuff like that, so it's not like it's hidden or anything like that. But you can end up looking at that to kind of make your own judgment. Now, for the cheapest buying price at the moment, it is $10, which is actually pretty cheap. And for the amount of hours that I put into this, definitely worth that price tag, in my opinion. But there are different tiers as well where you can get a free pet and everything like that for increased prices. Once again, goes into the cash shop. I highly suggest trying the game first. It does have a free trial and everything like that. So if you just want to try it out and see if you like it, the free trial probably won't be enough time to actually get into the in-depth mechanics, but it is enough time to actually, say, hey, I like this game or I don't like this game. And so it is one of those situations where you can go into it and just try it for free and stuff like that. And you can also get guest passes and stuff like that. So yeah, it is a game that I highly recommend for people that think it will fall within their niche. If you're looking for a truly unique MMO, this is definitely one to go for. Freaking go for it. It's one of the best MMOs ever made. And I don't say that lightly. Like, it is truly unique, and it is something that I really, really enjoyed for the 2 months that I've been playing it. Now, I did originally play it back in closed beta, and I enjoyed it back then, but it was very difficult for me to buy into it at the time, and I didn't have the time to invest into an MMO. But since I bought this game, and since I picked it up, really picked it up afterwards, I should say, since I picked it up afterwards, I've enjoyed the hell out of it. And I'm like, why didn't I already end up playing this game? Because I actually enjoy it a lot, and it ends up being one of my favorite games. And so, yeah, I like it a lot, but it's definitely not going to be for everyone. It has a lot of hardcore elements, and it has a lot of these sort of in-depth mechanics that a lot of people are not going to enjoy. And the lack of direction is going to be something that draws a lot of people off. For example, one of my friends that was playing it, he doesn't know what to do in the game. He's like, I wish it was telling me where to go. Like, he wants that theme park MMO aspect to where it's like, this is where you go next. This is where you go next. And it has like clear progression. This game does not have that. And so it kind of messes with his perception a bit, which is kind of a negative side to it. But once you get past that, and most new players do end up sort of running into that situation too, they're like, I don't know what I want to do. The end game is whatever you want it to be. And so most new players end up sticking with the game. They'll find their end game. They'll be like, oh, I want to be a master trader, and I want to be able to trade this. I want to build a production empire, or I want to go and be like a guild leader, and I want to be epic in PvP and take down all the other guys. I want to be a bandit and I want to just go and steal from other people. Or let's say you want to be a bad bounty hunter and you want to go kill other players that are being bandits and things like that. Like, that's perfectly something you can do. For me, it's just exploring the world and just enjoying my time with it. I play it every once in a while for the combat and stuff like that, and that is what I enjoy the most. And so, yeah, it's a game I love, and so I recommend it to people that are willing to try it out. It does have a free trial, so obviously go ahead and give that a shot. But overall, thank you guys so much for watching. This has been Michael with an impressions review of Black Desert Online, one of my favorite games, obviously. Like, I enjoyed it a lot, but I understand why people wouldn't as well, and there's a lot of technical issues as well with it that I talked about in this review. But anyways, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this one, and obviously give your thoughts. If you end up trying out the free trial, obviously give your thoughts in the comments below, or if you're already a player of the game. There are some players that talk about the end game and things like that, and they complain about the RNG aspects to it. The game does have a lot of RNGs type of stuff. For me, that's not a personal aspect to it, and it's only something that you're going to find near the end game, in my opinion. And so it's not necessarily going to go into your initial investment. Now, some people are going to be looking for maybe a long-term investment into the game, and so it is something you might want to look into before buying into it. But for the most part, I would say that the buy-in price or the buy-in sort of aspect to it of your time is definitely going to be worth it before you reach that point to where it would really affect your experience. And it's not a game to where you want to necessarily be the top guy. And maybe that's just me, because I'm never really that competitive, and so it's one of those situations where I'm just, in it for the world and stuff like that, and I'm playing it for PvE. Don't listen to all the people that are like, it's a PvP or PvP only game and stuff like that, and it's like, no, because I had a lot of people telling me that it's like, oh, this is PvP only. You actually don't unlock open PvP until level 50. You can access I think it's at level 20. Level 20, I think you can access PvP and everything like that, and you can go into a guild and everything, which is pretty cool. But other aspects to it, like, it's not only a PvP game. That's only one aspect to it. And every single aspect has its own merits. And it's just, I love it so much. I don't even know what to say about it at this point, because it's really hard to explain. It's a genre kind of bender. It bends your expectations of an MMO, and it's just great. And anyways, I'm going to stop rambling. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like I said, I'm going to go ahead and relaunch the game because it's still crashed, if you didn't forget. Yeah, I wish it wasn't so difficult to capture this game and play it at the same time. It has to do with like disc and stuff like that. So don't worry. That's not a thing that actually happens normally. I do want to make that sort of clear. It's like that never happens when I'm playing. I've played this game I had it running for like 24 plus hours straight one time. It's just like, yeah, it never actually did that. It only happens when I'm recording. And so that's just a technical issue with recording, because it does require a lot of system resources. And when I'm recording, it takes a lot of system resources. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and play some more because I need to capture extra footage to put into this time. How long have I been just sitting here? About 10 minutes? Yeah. I'll play it for 10 hours instead, because that's just, I love it. It is a really fun game. I like even just the combat for it. It's a combat system I really enjoy, and then just add in every other aspect to it. It's like, it's just, I'm so happy to be enjoying an MMO again to the aspects that I've enjoyed MMOs in the past. And it's something truly unique that I'm just like, yeah, I want to play more of it. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. It'll obviously be in the background of future videos. Hopefully sooner or later I fix up the technical issues. It seems like I can get it into like news topic videos and stuff like that because it's just short form. But yeah, it's something that I'll always have in the background every once in a while because I'm always going to be playing it. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.